Hey everyone, it's Montana Chill, aka Chad Strat, and I just wanted to do a quick tutorial slash review about saturation as a subject within Propellerhead Reason 9.5 plus. A couple things. I thought we'd talk a little about what is saturation, types of saturation, and then take a look at a handful of tools that I've been using and what I use them for and what I think they're really good for. The first thing that we should do when talking about saturation is talk about the difference between transient shaping versus harmonic distortion and what the difference is. Because you can get, sometimes within a dirty mix, you can get something to punch or cut by shaping the transient, and sometimes you can get it to sit in the mix better and cut by just slightly tweaking the harmonic distortion of your transients, transient peaks. So what is saturation? Saturation, there's two kinds of saturation. There's more, but there's two specific kinds we're going to talk about. There's console preamp saturation, and then there's tape saturation. Those are the two most widely used forms of saturation, and there's a good reason. When we talk about saturation, what we're fundamentally talking about is what happens to a transient peak when it clips. Digital world has hard clipping, and so it's ugly when it starts to clip. It starts to, the transient shelf, and they clip, and they're harsh to the ears when they start clipping. And so saturation, basically fundamentally, is soft clipping to try to maximize the envelope of volume and punch in a mix. In the late 1950s, 1960s, recording engineers started utilizing this soft clipping both within console preamps and tape machines to liven up peak transients in vocals or drums or guitars, and try to smooth out those sounds with warmth and depth while maximizing that natural compression and soft clipping that happens. Console saturation is typically going to be harsher than tape saturation. Tape saturation will typically be much smoother, softer, and warmer. Console saturation will typically be a little bit more distortion sounding in terms of its clipping. One thing that needs to be said is that there's no one answer for saturation, and every saturation plugin and technique is completely different. No two have the exact same output because of the technology and what it's doing. So let's take a quick moment and let's actually look at a waveform in our scope here and kind of do a little study as to what is it? What is happening here when we talk about transients? So I got a simple beat, and I think I may have forgot to turn this on. Did I? No, it's on. There we go. Did I get it? No. Let's try again. This might be a bit too zoomed in. Let's try to get this right so you guys can see something. Alright. So here is a snare with no saturation. Snare hit. And this is what the transients look like on this. You can see we have a couple of strong punches, and then the sound sort of dissipates quickly, and there's not a lot going on between these transient peaks. What's going to happen when I turn saturation on is these are going to skew and harmonically distort at some interval. It's almost like, think of it as like multiplying and scaling the transients in very subtle ways. not like your transient adjustments, shaping tools, where you're thinning or widening transients. Harmonic distortion is additive, so it's adding something to the transient. So let's see if we can capture, so study this picture real quick. Let's see if we can capture the same sound with some saturation. Forgot to pin that. Too far. This is kind of hard to catch. So, here, almost. We'll go with this. So here, you can see that we get, the transients themselves get not only rounded, but then you'll also see this artifact that's magnified in between the transient. I'll stop our beat here in case you guys are going nuts. It's dirtied up in the middle here as well. So this is where the warmth comes from, is the sort of the fattening up between the transients, the flattening of the transient peaks and how harsh or not harsh they are. And then you'll also notice that there's some jittery happening here on the back ends of the transients, and that's what a saturator is doing, is it's saturating the transients and fattening them up and adding some harmonic distortion to those, versus transient shaping is just simply taking your transients and widening or thinning them. So it's a totally different approach. Now, at the simplest base, you could say it's just adding distortion to transient peaks. You could do that. You could say that. Now, the tone, the roundness, the fatness of that distortion, these are all the subject matters that can be argued ad nauseum. But in terms of like the role of saturation, it is to help things sit in the mix better and fatter without EQ, because when you add EQ, you're fattening up a whole lot of things within the waveform. When you talk about shaping transients, you're only dealing with the peaks, number one, and number two, you're not affecting the whole tonality, but you're affecting the vibe of those transients. And the one thing that I'll say about using saturation is that, you know, a little bit goes a long way. Now, obviously, you can oversaturate for effect, for extreme effects, but saturation is not about extreme effects. Saturation is about warmth and fatness, and it's something to help things sit into a mix without affecting the overall vibe and tonality of what you're going for. So let's take a quick look at some of these and talk about, you know, how I typically use them and what they're for. We'll start with the Audiomatic. This has a tape setting. It colors the sound in a thin mid way, like with your low mids. I actually don't use Audiomatic for tape color or saturation. It doesn't sound bad to me, but it also doesn't sound genuine console or tape to me. But it's definitely, you could do some good things with this. I will say I have used Screen 4. I love this tape saturation. Both of these are tape saturation, not console preamp saturation. I think Screen 4, I mean, this is really warm. There it is without. There it is with. It's warm and that kick is fat. It's nice, really nice. I like that a lot. The Decam bus comp from Expansion definitely has a saturation switch on it. I'm not going to demo that because it's so subtle and really more targeted towards compression and master mix or bus mixing that that's not really what we're talking about right now. Saturator. There it is. Without. There it is with. I like this. Saturator is cool. I don't use it a lot, hardly at all. And the reason is, it's very, to me, if you needed flexibility in saturation in terms of the color, the mix, the type, Faturator is a really great way to go. I think Faturator would be greatly utilized in like electronic dance music. I think it'd be perfect for that because you get any variation of color and needs met there with the Faturator. It's a great plug. It's a great RE. I don't use it because I'm mostly hip hop. And in hip hop, you really want that analog historical warmth there. Next one up is a free plugin, and that is the Lindell Audio 6X500CM. The non-CM version, I think, is $100, and I think it has a low and high pass filter on it. So let's take a listen to this one. This is without it, and this is with it. You hear a little bit of a rumble on that kick. Now you might argue, well, you're losing your punch on your kick there, and this drum track does have a nice vibe to it, and it is nice and punchy. But if you have like a bass hit that has an attack on it, okay, what you're going to get is you're going to get phasing on that kick and on that bass at the same time. And what this does, offsetting that little, fatten up that transient for this kick, will allow that transient to offset just enough for it to continue the same kind of punch and vibe. So while individually you listen to this and you think, you took away the punch of that, you fattened it, you didn't, so it's same type of bass response, but a fatter transient, it just sounds sloppy. It's not as clean of a kick. That's true. Sometimes in a mix you want that. Sometimes in a mix you want that fattened up transient so that it's offset from, say, another transient that's in the mix to help it sit in that mix a little better. I love this Lindell 6X500CM. I use this on a lot of tracks. I'm using it a lot lately because it just has a really good analog console kind of vibe. This is console saturation, so it's going to be a little floppier sounding and less fat than your tape saturation. But on something like a kick, that's really nice. So I like the saturation a lot. I use it quite a bit. I did also put the Red Rock Sound exciter. Now this has a drive knob on it, and I did want to mention it because in terms of like your higher end transients, like your cymbals, snares, tamarines, shakers, stuff like that, you need some saturation on them. This exciter can really make a difference. It can do a nice job there. So I thought it was worth mentioning. I don't use it, but it could be used that way. It is an exciter, but it does have a saturation drive to it. So worth looking into if you haven't. The next one I'll talk about is the soft tube saturation knob. So here's my take on this. I actually don't use this. It's good saturation. It's very clean. To me, this soft tube saturation knob is the most transparent saturation of this whole mix that I have here of plugins and REs. It's very transparent, very pristine, very transparent. It's good saturation. It can get harsh, it can be smooth, somewhere in between. It's got this high, natural, low saturation type. It's really, really transparent. In the hip hop world, I don't use it because it's transparent and I want color. So if you need color in your transient saturations, this probably isn't what you want to use. I think maybe if you had maybe rock, metal, pop, this would be a great saturation tool to use. Very transparent. I like it a lot, but I just don't happen to use it. The next one is another free one called Sonic U by Sonimus. And this, if you work the input in the drive knob, you can really get I will say this is the most subtle. Get a little louder. You can hear that. And just like the Lindell plugin, this one, it it's fattening it up. I mean, it's just this is really good, honestly. And it's free, so it's you know, if you're looking for a good saturation plugin to toss on something, not only do you get your EQ here, which is this is an amazing EQ, by the way, but this drive combination as a preamp saturator is really good. It's really good quality. So good job. Props to Sonomus. One that I use consistently in the genre that I work in, which is hip hop, is the Kramer tape by Waves. I love this thing. It's very authentic. And I just love the harmonics on it. Yeah, good stuff. That thing's really good. I'll also mention the Chef 73, the Nave EQ. It does have a drive and a preamp section, so it's another console preamp saturation that you can add. The Chef 73, it is so subtle, it's like almost hard to hear, but I think a lot of people like that subtlety. So if you need the subtlety, I would say this is it's one of the most subtle that's in this mix here of plugins and REs. So I use it a lot on like bass guitars and actually electric guitars. I use this a lot for that, for those uses. It's got a nice harmonic to it that's so subtle. You have a high level of confidence that the color and the harmonics are, first of all, really professional and widely used among professional studios and recordings, and second of all, you know that you're not affecting the tone and the vibe of your mix, but you're offsetting those transients and getting those harmonics to help tweak something into a mix just perfectly. So that's kind of a handful. I know there's a lot of different tools out there a lot of you use. Leave a comment below with some plugins I should check out. I haven't checked them all out. If you've got saturation tools that I should give a go at, please leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like and a share. I really appreciate your views, and stay tuned to the comments below. There'll be a link there. I'm going to be doing a live stream studio session, and I'll put the date and link there to that feed. We're going to be taking some vinyl records and making an 8-bar hip-hop track together, just for fun, and hang out and have a bourbon and make some music and do some Reason music together. So hope you'll join me for that when that date approaches. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks.